Awesome. Welcome to Planetary Health First, Mars Next. I hope you're super excited because I am. Today is a great day. This is Bring a Friend series, and we got Bob Crimmins. And he's not like any other venture capitalist. He's been doing this a long time. He's had 50 some startups that he's invested in. His portfolio is full of powder ready. And I think they're going to be raising for another fund. But his unique advantage is he comes to you. He comes and wants to vet and get to know these founders. So if you're not in the Bay Area, don't worry. It's great. He comes to whether it be Tennessee or Michigan, Detroit. I don't know his schedule, but he'll come, he'll vet, he'll get to know you. And Charles can say, because he's gone through the grill. So we have Charles as well. He's here. He's a founder, startup founder, and he's in Bob's portfolio. So I'm going to stop talking now and let us move through this because this is Bring a Friend, but we can do some punching here because we're going to dive through because there's the venture capital take and the founder take. So you guys, great to have you here.
Put up your dukes.
Okay, I'm ready to go. I'm going to duck and weave a little bit, but I think before we start, I think it would do a service to a lot of the people that are listening to this. If Bob, if you can provide an introduction, I think what you do is so unique versus a lot of the venture capital community and spending time with founders and really getting to know them prior to assessing if it's a good fit. So if you could expand for a lot of the audience that's listening to this conversation of what's unique about the fund and you particularly as a director.
Yeah, happy to. And I'll put a pin in that word that you just used, fit, right? So by way of background, I'm a serial founder. I founded a handful of companies in Seattle, starting in just about 2000, 24 years now in startup land. So after going through several cycles as the founder, I felt like, every startup, I learned some experience that I took into the next one, took into the next one, took into the next one. You do that enough, you start to see some things you can share with other founders to say, hey, by the way, this is probably coming. And after seeing so many patterns as a founder myself, and then as a mentor and advisor, I mentor advised literally on this, no hyperbole, hundreds of founders over the course of about 15 years, very active as a mentor at Techstars. And along the way, began inviting founders and investors that I knew together to get to know each other. Started out as a poker game. Honestly, I wanted to learn how to play poker. I started inviting all the people that I knew and was having conversations with to come out and learn how to play cards. That humble little thing that started with, I think we had 6 people the first night, over the last now 18 years, has grown and grown and took on a life of its own. It is what became Startup Haven. And we now, I could talk for hours on how we got here, but just fast forward 18 years, we have about 2,300 founders and investors across North America. Everybody's vetted. Everybody has to be full-time, venture scalable company with some early elements of traction, progress, commercialization, something. And what I learned, the biggest takeaway, in 24 years of startup world, you know what matters the most is relationships. It's getting to know people who you can help. I always lead with that because this is not a transactional thing. But the more people that you know that you can help are probably also the people that can help you. And as it turns out, there just is no better person to know as a venture scale founder than another venture scale founder, and maybe some investors too. Some of the good investors who have the bandwidth and the inclination to roll up their sleeves and help startups even if they're not investing. So that's how I sort of got to where I am now. That thing grew. We have 14 city chapters now. We're launching in a bunch more chapters. That part of the organization, Startup Haven Ventures, is not a business. It's my passion project now that I've gotten to do for all these 18 years. I've met some of the most incredible people in my life, founders and investors, and I want to bring that to other founders. And so we've hosted more than 375 events, live events for founders and investors over all these years. And out of that, I realized, wow, that's a lot of I see a lot of startups, and have for a long time, and never had a fund to invest in any of them. And so a few years ago, we launched the Startup Haven Ventures Fund, and I'm very happy to say Charles was the last investment of Fund One, and ironically, it fit our thesis so well. It's one of the things I brag about when I talk to other investors about Charles, besides him being a handsome devil and working on an amazing product that literally is going to change the world. It's just incredible what he's doing. It's going to have such impact. But he's also the proof point. Charles is in Sacramento. Sacramento is not on any investor's list of great places to start a company and great places to invest and look for startups. I shouldn't say that. All the investors in Sacramento, they get that, right? And it's the same for Memphis, and Indiana, right, and Tulsa, and other places. And having been involved in startup Haven for so many years, and having seen so many incredible founders everywhere, including the Bay Area. There's actually good founders in the Bay Area too. New York's got a bunch of good ones too. And guess what? So does Sacramento, and so does Memphis. And I don't care where you're from. I don't have that bias. There's plenty of investors who will tell you if you invest outside of a major market, you're wasting your money. Just short of wasting your money. If you want to be a good investor and you want to be successful, go to the Bay Area, invest there. Go to New York, invest there. Go to Boston. Go to these major tech hubs. And it's true. You have an advantage if you're in a major tech hub with lots of venture capital around, lots of other startups around, lots of support infrastructure there for venture scale startups. That's an advantage for sure. But that doesn't mean you can't build a successful venture scalable company anywhere else in the world. And when I launched the fund, the thesis was that those great founders are everywhere. Every nook and cranny's got one. And in fact, even if I can't invest, and this is the beauty of what I think I get to do, even if I can't invest, because not everybody's in my thesis, even if I can't invest, I can connect you from Tulsa, Oklahoma, into a network of more than 2,000 serious venture scale founders, investors who raised their hand and said, I'll help if I can. And that's a tremendous thing. And as Charles knows, we host a number of events in our chapter cities just to bring founders together to build relationships. There's no agenda. And besides, I don't have anything to sell. Like I when I reach out to a lot of founders, say, hey, by the way, I'm going to be in your city. I'm hosting breakfast. Like, what's the catch? What product are you selling? Because this is true. I mean, venture scale founders are highly sought after, and there's always somebody trying to get in their pocket. Their inbox is inundated with service providers and software developers and all these other things, and we don't have any of that. I wouldn't even monetize you if I could, because, and history has shown this over 18 years, there's no business model here. Founders suck as customers. They don't have any money. They come and go, right? There's so much noise in their space, you can't even get their attention. If you do get their attention, you're not going to move the needle for them. Like, you can't be of very much value to a venture scale founder past about their seed round. Now they got capital, they got to grow a company. Pre-seed, for sure. Bootstrappers, absolutely. Bring them together, help them connect with each other, right? Very, very few seeds, certainly when you get to Series A, founders go to networking events. They don't. It's not worth their time, because the room is 70% service providers and recruiters and people looking for a job and so on and so forth. And that's probably a pretty good mix, frankly, 70%. That means there's 30% venture scale founders, investors in that room. That's a pretty target-rich environment. The only things we ever do are 100% founders and investors. So what that means is if you're a venture scale founder that's building a company, you might still come. We have founders who are running unicorn companies that still come to our events. We have chapter directors who, all our chapter directors are founder investors, and they're running unicorns, and they still put in their time to bring people together because they know how hard it is to be successful as a venture scale founder. It's ridiculously hard. I mean, 5%, I think, is actually pretty fat. People talk about, like, what's the probability of success of a venture scale startup? 90, 95% failure. And people, oh, I don't know if it's that bad. No, I can tell you, it's worse, because what you don't see are all the founders that never get on anybody's radar. They work on something, they quit their job, 14 months later, they're out of money, their relationships are all burnt, and they're going back to the mothership, to get a regular job. And they don't show up in Crunchbase, and nobody's counting them, right? They're not in the stats. This stuff, can I curse on your show, by the way, Michael?
Yeah, as long as it's just not bad curse.
It's hard.
Hard as shit.
Hard. I can't even tell you how hard it is. And having been in this now for 24 years and being around founders investors in 18 years as organizer for founders investors, I've seen so much bloodshed. It's horrible. And we have this tremendous survivor bias in the startup world, as we all know. And when you rise above, if you're just starting a company, raising some money, and you build a company, like, you never have to ever see those hundreds and thousands of other founders who struggled, who were smart, had a lot of stuff going their way, had an interesting idea and a great market, blah, 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 and still didn't make it. For good or for bad, I put myself in a position where I made myself have to see them. So I've seen so many people struggle in a very, very hard way and fail. And of course, I hope that they become a survivor bias story, and they do the next startup and the next startup, and finally they get there, and then they're this overnight success, and it only took them 13 years, but nobody knows that because they don't talk about it. So what I wanted to do was start a Haven, was just create this network of those people who have been through it. And as I said, we have anywhere from 2 gals in a garage to sold 2 companies to Google, IPO'd, everything in between. And having a group of founders that understand the journey and want to help, tremendously valuable. And so, in Sacramento, we've hosted a couple of breakfasts, for example. That's one of the things I do. Like, I think I'm going to be in 15 cities this year. And every time I travel, I try to host a breakfast for founders and a dinner for investors. Sometimes we bring them both together. Just because I'm there anyway, and it's a couple $100 to host a breakfast for a bunch of people and bring them together and let them get to know each other. And check me here, Charles. You get the right people around the table. What happens? Oh my God, we got to talk, and I know someone who can help you. And oh, did you know about this? And all of a sudden, everybody's exchanging LinkedIn's and emails and stuff. It's incredible what happens when you get the right people around a table with no distractions. Like founders, investors, 100%, it's magic. And so that's what I've been doing for 18 years. And I was fortunate enough to be able to build a venture capital firm based on all those amazing founders that I get to see.
Yeah, so let's talk about fit, because there's a fit from an investor standpoint and there's a fit from the founder standpoint. And from a founder standpoint, from us, it's not just about the money, but it's about the insight. It's about the feedback. It's about the mentorship. Also, do personalities fit together? Because this is a roller coaster. We're going to have ups and downs. Things may not go exactly as planned. And do those investors really have your back? So for us, we're talking to a lot of different investors, a lot of different people to determine whether or not they want to go on this ride and they align with mission and vision. But also from what I've seen when we go to conferences, often when you see somebody who have investor or venture capital on their tag, they're just bombarded. They're circled with so many people throwing ideas and wanting to get access to the capital. How do you, Bob, determine who to speak with, who not to, or who to connect with, and how do you make that determination of what's a good allocation of your time based upon all the people that want your time?
Yeah, I think there's an evolution that founders go through when they first start. If you've never been a startup founder, you don't know jack about raising money. You've never, chances are you've never raised money before. But there's investors, you're supposed to pitch them. And so you just go out and you try investors, you try to pitch investors. And you soon learn that that's not a very effective approach. And what we teach founders in our accelerator is precisely what I learned myself, having done it wrong for years. You can know if someone's, from an investor perspective, you can kind of know to a very high degree which investors you should talk to and which ones you should. Some say, oh no, pitch every investor, always be pitching, always be pitching, always be pitching. Maybe that's an effective strategy for some people. I don't see it work very often. What I see works is a founder who goes, okay, I'm building this kind of product in this kind of market. I've got this kind of business model. I'm at this stage. I've got this much traction. What investors can I find that have a demonstrable record of investing in companies kind of about like me? And so when you build a list of investors, that list should be full of investors where you can explain why that investor would understand what you're doing, has written other checks roughly of your size, at your stage, in your market, with your kind of product, da da da. And if they don't have any of those vectors, then I'm not saying they will never invest in you, but time is the number one limited resource for a founder. And if you spend a minute pitching an investor who you could have said, oh, look, Crunchbase shows they've never, ever invested in this sector before. Never invested in a round like mine, at my stage, blah, blah, blah. Don't get a meeting with them. I don't care. Like, don't even try. And the investors don't want to meet you anyway. You'll hear a lot of investors, oh yeah, we want to meet them early and build a relationship. And that's true. If a lot of these other vectors align, then it's okay to meet investors and get to know them. But if you're pitching an investor that's a Series A investor and you're raising a pre-seed or a seed, they're not going to invest in you. No matter how much they tell you they love your idea and want you to keep them on your update list, love what you're working on, love this, love that, would love to see this. They're not going to invest. But a lot of founders, they leave those conversations with investors that are not a good fit for them. And what they do is they go home and they tell their spouse, oh man, I just had this great investor. They really love what we're working on. They want us to keep them updated. What that translates to is, no, we're not going to invest in you. And in my experience, more often than not, what it really means is you're unfundable. Come back when you're fundable. Because if you're fundable, I'd frickin' fund you. No is a great answer. I encourage founders to try to get to the answer no as quickly as you can.
And I think, Bob, you touched on a great point, which is interesting for founders. Is that there's a moment where you become fundable when you hit specific milestones through your newsletters and through your updates that start to change the momentum from an investor perspective. And, maybe you can discuss, some of those moments in time from our standpoint, when you have a large contract come through, or you have major breakthroughs from a R&D standpoint, or you validated a new vertical in the market, those are moments in time that really change the trajectory of the company, or discoveries or clinical validation that can really change the trajectory of the company. But there's so many different founders that are unique with their talents and their motivations. And then also, so many different aspects and verticals that you're looking at from a portfolio perspective. How do you delineate what are significant milestones from an investor standpoint and significant from a founder standpoint? Because sometimes those could be separated.
Often they're separated, and they're separated often by a large margin. So if you're a founder and some big inflection point happens for you, you get an LOI with somebody, or you did this new release and it's great and you're getting great feedback, or whatever the things are, you have to understand that, especially at the early stage, this changes the further up the stack of venture capital you go. If you're pre-seed or seed, in my view, the most risk for investors at those stages is that you don't raise your next round. So if you're pitching an investor with a here's where we are story, and your here's where we're going story doesn't to them feel like that's going to justify your next investors to write a check for you in 6 to 18 months, whatever your timeline is. So you as a founder should be looking at your milestones, your inflection points, these things that are happening in your business that feel like they're really positive and they're changing the trajectory of the company. You should qualify those, and I would say as much as you can quantify those as why they would be impressive, important, relevant to an investor. Because what investors see, and gosh, founders, please understand this, a moderately active investor these days is going to see 1,000 deals a year, and they're going to invest in 8, right? So they're looking at your deal first and foremost as like, why should I pay a minute of attention to you? And if your milestones and the inflection points, the things you've achieved don't ring out like, oh my God, you're at that stage? Crap. That's how I felt about Charles. I'm like, wait, you've done all of that and you're at this stage and you've only raised that much. If Charles was in any other city, I would never have gotten to invest in it because he would have blown past my thesis. Thank God he was in a secondary capital market, right? If he was in the Bay Area or New York, I never would have got to invest in him.
So, Bob, why did you invest in Heido?
A few things. It took me a couple days to get to a point where I thought it could be a good fit, and that I will say largely comes down to Charles. But I have some history in healthcare tech, and I knew the problem he was going after, so I recognized that. And when I saw him speak at a small event, I remember thinking, God, he can't really solve that problem. That's intractable. Nobody's going to solve that problem. They've been trying to solve that problem for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't do it. And so I, tapped him on the shoulder afterward and like, tell me about what you're working on. Wait, how are you going to do that? Like, I know this problem. Like, how can you really solve that? And so I was very impressed that he had come up with what I thought was a cogent solution to this really intractable problem. And so that was my initial interest. Wow, big problem, super hard problem. And, by my reckoning, with my experience, a credible solution to a ridiculously hard problem. Okay, I want to know more. So then I spent basically the rest of that day and the next day spending time with Charles and his co-founder and just talking through how is he going to do this. Now, this is a little bit subtle, but for me, we have an accelerator. In the accelerator, we have a curriculum. And the curriculum is based on this framework called Groundwork that tries to coach startups about how to build a cogent story, right? How to actually bring a rational take on your business model, on your roadmap, on your capital strategy, and all these things. Say, well, is that rational? Can that be quantified? Can you validate that the assumptions that you're making could actually happen, right? It's not prediction, it's not 100%, but so many founders go on sort of working hard and fast in a direction and it feels good, they're making progress. But if you ask them, what is the next right strategic milestone for you to get to with the capital that you have? Not like, yeah, we're going to raise 2 million and then we'll be great, we'll get in a milestone. Like, what is the next right thing that you can get to? Not a stretch. I don't care about ambition, aggressive. I don't give a crap about that. We have 95% failure rate for some reasons, and those are based on a lot of patterns. And if there's a pattern I see over and over and over again, it's that founders have these really aggressive goals and they're encouraged, they're cheered on to be aggressive, swing hard, go for the faraway fence. That's awesome. Okay, good. That can be good. But I was at the University of Washington a couple of weeks. I'll share this with you guys. So I was working with my team there and overheard a table of students talking. And one of them was trying to encourage one of the other students. And he said, he used that aphorism, you miss 100% of the shots that you never take. And he thought he was, and he probably was. For all I know, it was great advice, like trying to encourage the guy to do something that was out of his comfort zone. Terrific. And immediately I thought, gosh, that does not apply to the startup world. The right aphorism for the startup world is you miss 100% of the shots you never, ever could have made. And that's an important thing for founders to understand because they run out of time. Remember I said time was like the most valuable resource? You spend 3 months trying to achieve something that you never, ever could have achieved, but you thought it felt like a stretch goal and it felt ambitious and it was like you're going to go for it, right? And everybody was encouraging, like, man, you're going to change the world. That's awesome. But instead you said, okay, yeah, we do want to we're swinging for a faraway fence. But how do we get there? You have to cross the pond one lily pad at a time. Where's the next place you need to get to? Now, in the venture scale world, that typically corresponds to some round of funding. But if you ignore the fact that you have to cross the pond in a certain amount of time, you're going to miss it. A stink gets on the fish after a while. If you keep missing milestones, you're talking to investors, you're giving updates. Next thing you know, they're like, Yeah, well, there must be something wrong here, because if there weren't something wrong, then you would have gotten there by now. Now it's been 2 years. You keep saying it's going to be big, and you're trying to do big things. And you're focused on product is one of the leading indicators that you're not going to get across the pond. But in any case, uh, being disciplined enough to think about, wait, what can we actually do? What's the best thing for us to do? And can we quantify and validate that we can actually get there? And that is what I look for. That's what I teach in the accelerator. That's how we select companies for the accelerator, or for the fund. And that's what I saw in Charles. I saw Charles thinking that way already. I didn't have to coach him for 5 seconds. He was just doing that. It's like, oh, let me show you this, and this is how that's going to work. We're going to do this. We can't do that yet. We're going to get there. We can't do that yet. Here's what we're going to do instead. And and all those things can be improved. Like, nobody gets it right the first time. But just that he had that sort of disciplined approach to thinking about how he was going to get from here to there. I mean, Charles, you've been around for over 4 years-ish, 4.5, 5, something like, well,
Yeah.
a long time. But, version 4 of your product, it's healthcare. It's hard. Healthcare, super, super hard. Hardware, super, super hard, right? So, yeah, that takes a while. But, you could have just blown up in the first year and said, oh, we're going to build this crappy little thing. We're going to put it in healthcare. And you could have gotten yourself in a lot of trouble. You're at a place now, I think, if I can say this out loud, you can cut this if you need to. But I think Charles is at a place now where he can actually start to run. He doesn't have to be, you always have to be methodical, but he doesn't have to be quite as, I'll say, conservative. And again, I don't care if I don't want you to be conservative. I don't want you to be aggressive. I want you to be freaking rational. Like, how do you get from here to there? Startups are full of passion, and it's terrific. But what I think a lot of founders don't realize, passion doesn't help you build a great business. Passion helps you get through the hard times that are going to come. And if you don't have passion, you're going to quit. But your passion for the idea, for the product, for whatever it is, that passion doesn't necessarily correlate with building a great business. It got you started, and it can get you through the hard times. But if you rely on it too much, it becomes blinders, and you stop seeing like how to act rationally, right? Because it feels like that's how you should do it. And you get all this encouragement that, that's, follow your bliss, and hang in there. The advice that I see some founders get, where people tell them, yeah, just hang in there, man. You just got to survive. It's perseverance, perseverance, perseverance. That's true. But perseverance doesn't make you successful. Perseverance helps you get through the moments when you're not being successful. Better to think about what would you have to do to become more successful along that way, right? And hard things are going to come no matter what. Even if you're the most rational dude on the planet, you're still going to get in trouble. You're going to get kicked in the gut every other day. I don't care who you are. But there's a better way to do it.
Hey, so Bob, how do you, as a venture capitalist, know how much to get involved and not? Like, where's that fine line? Like, you don't want to be the babysitter with a founder. How do you like make that work? And I'm sure Charles is a perfect example. He's already proactive, but can you give us a little lay of that? And the other, and go ahead on that one.
Well, I'm horrible at that. How do I say this? All of my peers, my own sort of mentors and advisors, will tell me that I spend too much time with my founders, and it's true. And it was fine for Fund 1, and by the time we get to Fund 3, there's gonna be a lot of founders I have to spend an hour a month with. There's not enough hours in a month, right? Mm-hmm. So all my founders have my cell number. They know I will answer anytime they call, 24/7. For those who want it, I have monthly calls with a lot of my founders. Some of them, they don't need that. Some of them don't want that, even though maybe I think they need it. But I think it's a miscalculation for investors to think that the things that they're doing for their founders are really going to make a material difference. Like, their founders need them. There's a philosophy, if you will, about picking founders. You want to pick the founders who don't need your help. And that's true enough. That's a good making quality of a founder if you invest in them, and they never ever tap on your shoulder and they IPO, right? That's a terrific result. Who doesn't want that? But it's ridiculously rare. It's like, it's not just, you don't have to have just a good founder. You got to have a good founder in a good market at the right time with all the wind at their back, and no bad things happen. Like, that doesn't happen. That's really, 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 really rare. So you got to be there to support them. I try to support my founders, first and foremost. As a former founder, this shit is hard. Like, you can tell me anything. I don't care how bad it is. I mean, I have founders that, I think I stun them sometimes because they'll bring me really, really bad news. And I'll just say, okay, what are we going to do next? Let's go. And
so Bob, now that you and Charles are in the same boat, where are you guys going next together? I imagine you're pre-seed. There's going to be a Series A. How does that work? How does that kumbaya? Tell me about that, Charles, Bob.
Charles?
Yeah, so we have to hit a series of milestones to move this ship forward. What's exciting is, to Bob's point, is we've had some validation that's very promising, and we've gone through quite a bit of version control, quality assurance, as well as getting ready for mass manufacturing. The implications are very big to touch a lot of lives within congestive heart failure, as well as mild to moderate dementia patients. Now it's a question of inking a couple of deals with some payers to establish scale, and then that will unlock the next amount of money. But everything is very methodical. We're not trying to boil the ocean. It's, we're very specific on who we speak with, why we speak with it. We're not trying to attack a bunch of different verticals. Otherwise, we can't be successful at one thing very well. So if we continue going down the same strategy and we're successful, validating the most important thing, which is improving outcomes for patients and saving cost, then our plan will work. But it'll be based upon, making more good decisions than poor over the last 5 years to get us the opportunity to be successful and then raise a Series A and potentially beyond.
So that's probably the big joy that both of you guys have shared. I mean, of course, the big one is the IPO and all the other stuff. But right now, the immediate thing is getting that milestone to get to that Series A. I mean, right? Like that 18-month, like you were talking about earlier, Bob, that critical time point.
Yeah, and I will say, so a couple things, if I might. On the timeline, I think a lot of early companies make the mistake of thinking they have to raise for an 18-month or 18 to 24-month time frame. And I don't think that's usually the case. It is sometimes, but it's usually not. If you're very, very early, you should, if you're being sort of rational about it and you're thinking, gosh, what can we get to next? That would be an inflection point that some next investors would recognize as the kind of thing they like to see. And if you can identify that milestone, you can usually achieve that typically in 6 months. And in fact, the groundwork framework that we use, like if a founder tells me, I say, what's your next strategic milestone? And strategic milestone is important. It's not just a milestone, not like a next good thing that you might be able to achieve. The next strategic milestone has to unlock something. It's not just, oh, we made progress when we arrived and it's bigger than it was before. It has to unlock something meaningful for the business. And if you're the early stage, that meaningful thing it has to unlock is funding. And if you were to think about the things that you can unlock, if you think you're gonna tell me that the thing you're gonna unlock's a year away, your headlights don't go out that far. I can't. It's absolutely untenable that a founder knows what they're going to achieve in a year. 4 to 6 months, I think, is your headlights. Like, if it's not more than 4 months, then it's probably not strategic, because it might be a small thing. It might be a good. I mean, if you've already been working on something, you got something 2 months away, and it is going to be that strategic milestone. Terrific. If when I ask you the question, what's your next strategic milestone? And you're like, oh, well, what do you mean? And like, you got to figure it out. If it's less than 4 months, the thing that you come up with on the fly, it's probably not big enough to be strategic. It could be. I'm not saying it can't, but it's unlikely. And if it's more than 6 months, your headlights don't go out that far. If you tell me, like, our next thing is going to be 8, 9, 10, 12 months, like, everything's going to change so much. Your market's going to change. Your team's going to change. You're going to learn so much. If you're planning to hit an inflection point more than 6 months out, don't take this the wrong way, founders, but I will bet against you every single time. If you're pre-seed or seed and your next strategic milestone you think is more than 6 months away, I'm going to say you're in deep trouble, because you don't know all the things that are going to happen 6 months from now. You barely know 6 months, right? 6 months is about, I think, as far as you can sort of, we refer to it as identifying what must be true in order for you to achieve that milestone. And there's enough ambiguity and uncertainty that getting to 4 months, I think you can do. I've worked with lots of founders. We can do that. I can do that in my sleep. 4 months is a good number. Once it gets out to 6 months, you start quantifying the assumptions that you're making, like, oh, well, what's going to happen week over week over week over week until you get there, and you start to see that there's huge gaps in what they're thinking will be true, and they're utterly unjustifiable. You could show them to 100 people who are knowledgeable, experienced in your space, understand what you're trying to do, and none of them will tell you that that's likely to happen. Could it happen? Sure, anything's possible, right? What you're trying to do is figure out what's probable, and if you're going out more than 6 months, I just don't think you can get to probabilities.
Well, I like that for a life goal too. 4 to 6 months, that if you have too far out, like, sure, you have vision goals and all these crazy things where you want to be, no regrets, as we age, but it seems like that's a good strategy for all of us with life goals, execution. So tell me, you guys, like, from a different point of view. Charles, you're the founder. What's your mindset? Bob, you're the investor. There's not always the alignment, term sheets before, and then like the before and after this story. Let's get through a little bit of that.
I think that's a good question. So for me, it's very important to determine it's a right fit. So when we first started, I was talking to Bob about fit. It's aligning, making sure that our personalities and the amount that he brings to the table complements our efforts, because you have advisors, you have a lot of moving pieces, you have a lot of things going on from a startup perspective. I think what Bob brings is unique insights because he's been in my position before multiple times. He's seen hundreds of companies experience similar paths. They may be different companies, but there's a recurring theme that happens. So from a founder perspective, at least for me, it's exceptionally important that they have those unique insights, because there's a lot of capital in the market out there, but what's different and unique is the perspective and the guidance. And you may not need somebody to tap on the shoulder on a monthly basis, but there's going to come a point in time where things don't go right, or maybe they go exceptionally right. And having that area of expertise can be the difference of the company moving forward and getting those additional rounds or running out of capital. And I think a lot of that value, can be brought by incorporating the right people into the team. And I see investors as part of the team. They are one person that can help support us beyond capital, but they also have the power of the networking effect. And that's super important from a founder's perspective.
Bob?
Yeah, for me, so I don't want to break anything. I think of this as 24 years of pattern matching. I've seen so many patterns. Patterns, it's a subtle thing. Whether or not that pattern is actually a good fit for what's going on right now in Charles' life or in the life of Heido, I can't know for certain. But when I see patterns, like Charles will send me a text, hey, just got outreach from this. What do you think about this? I'll say, well, here's a pattern I've seen. Like, don't spend a minute with them, or actually double click on that thing. That could be good. But I'm conscious that I'm not running Heido. Charles is running Heido. I've seen a lot of patterns. I know a lot of people. I want to bring those patterns and those people to Charles in the best way that I can, without being a dick about it and overwhelming him and trying to second guess him or anything like that. So, and that's what I do with all my companies, is I try to go deep and I bring that sort of rational framework to their own thinking to help them think through that more, because it's basically what I do morning, noon, and night. And so, I want to do that with Charles and with all my founders. I think what's coming next, for Charles, partly is some new patterns that he hasn't seen before, and it's not for me to be the guy that's going to come in and say, oh, here, I'll teach you all about the patterns. I'll be your guide. My immediate thought is, who else do I know who's been through those patterns and knows them even better than I do, and more and more specifically relevant to Charles and Charles's experience and stage and the product and the market and the customer. That's what I want to bring in. I'm one person. Charles, I hope that I help you from time to time. But in the end, 5 years from now, when we look back, I hope that what you tell me and what you tell everybody else is, Bob's fantastic. You should take his money. You should go try to get his money. But what's better than Bob is all the other people that I met through Bob. That's what I want to bring to Charles. That's what I want to bring to all my founders. Yeah, I have a wedge into the world. I have a perspective about the way I think about things, and I hope that that's helpful. But it will never be as helpful as all the other people that I can bring to founders.
Bob, I love how you coined that. I look at it as the power of the network and your wisdom, your judgment, your humility, like opening up all those like fast tracks and just that's years of experience that you're getting. So that's great.
Thank you. I don't know another way.
And we're very grateful to have, Bob participate in the round. And I also believe in the same type of coinage where, we can also bring, certain aspects and certain startups and other people within our network too. So I believe that relationship goes both ways. As a founder, don't just expect people to give. You also need to be able to offer things up to help others. And then by helping others, you'll be helping yourself, net.
100%.
So we're
Charles.
Sorry.
A few of my founders have what Charles just described in spades. A lot of them are just they're wrestling a tiger by the tail, and I love all my founders. I'll spend time with all my founders. Charles has a very interesting perspective. He's very generous in thinking about me, which I don't expect, but I'm always delighted. When Charles says, "Hey, I just saw this startup," or you should meet this investor, or by the way, do you know about this? And I think that's terrific, and it's a great even if it's not your habit, it's a great one to develop. To be thinking about how can I help the people who are helping me, and that's the philosophy behind Startup Haven is getting all these founders together who say, "I will help others if I can." I don't want my founders to spend a minute trying to help me, but when they do, I recognize that as a special trait, a characteristic that I admire.
Well, Charles, Bob, this has been amazing. We're kind of coming to the end. We're wrapping it up. I really appreciate, Charles, that you've been able to come on and more importantly, bring Bob. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity. And Charles, you're my friend too. I want to bring a friend along.
Well, I'm very happy that we're still friends. And then if there's a part 2 of this, Bob can tell you about his experience playing pickleball and some of the walks and talks that we've had in the past. He's got a lot of good stories to share. If you are a founder looking for a forward-thinking venture capital partner, Bob is the guy. So give him a shot.
Or a pickleball player. I'm a pickleball player over here in Virginia. So pickleball is you should invest in that, Bob. Right?
Yeah. Well, every time I have an idea about this thing that should exist, but then I find out there's 30 other people doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Cool. They'll all catch up.
All right. Well, until next time, friends, welcome and glad you enjoyed us on Planetary Health First, Mars Next. It's been a great journey. Until next time, friends, peace be